checklist which I have prepared, like the course details which we will be actually discussing in our class, right? All the topics that we have, like that we will be actually covering up in the class, you can see over here. All right, so as you can see on the day first, that is today, we'll just be doing with the introduction part, like what is Selenium, how, like why Selenium is, why C sharp is important, how you can implement Selenium with C sharp, and the installation of the Visual Studio and all the software, like the platform on which we will be actually making our code, like the Visual Studio required for the .NET, the Selenium with C sharp, right? And then we will be moving towards the OOPS concepts, right? The basic concepts of the OOPS, what is static, non-static, how to create the objects, what is class, static and the non-static constructor and all everything. All right, and then like 2 days we will be actually working on the OOPS concepts. And then why am I focusing on the OOPS concepts, that also I'll just discuss with you in few minutes. All right, and then we will be discussing the interfaces, like what is an interface and how they are used in Selenium and all everything I will be just discussing in the class. All right, and then after that we will be moving towards the Selenium part. Okay, like how can you identify the objects with Selenium, how it can be, how it will be done in C sharp as well. That, so on the day fourth we will be moving towards the Selenium part. Okay, so like the first 3 days we will be actually doing with the introduction part only, the OOPS concepts and all everything. All right, and then you can just have a look at the checklist. These are all the topics that we will be covering up, like how to handle the pop-up, how to handle the web tables and drop down handling, alert management. Okay, and if you have like multiple, how to work with the multiple XPaths, then what is an XPath, how will you identify the objects in Selenium, like we have different locator strategies with which we identify the objects. All right, so that all we will be taking up in the class. Okay, and then we will be like, I'll be giving you the exercises as well to do, and then you'll be implementing them, and you'll like any doubt you have, you can just ask me in the class or after that. Okay, and then the concept of frame, concept of actions classes. Okay, and then after that we will also see how can you work with the Excel file, how to manage the data with the Excel file, right? If you want to read and write the data into the Excel file, then how can you do with that? So for that we actually require the endpoint APIs, right? So what is an endpoint API and all everything, everything we'll just have a look at it in the class. Everything we will be covering up. Okay, and then we will be taking up the framework, and then what is required in order to make the frameworks in C sharp, that is NUnit. Similar to the JUnit or the test-ng in Java, we require NUnit in C sharp. All right, to implement the test cases, to build the test cases in your C sharp project. All right, so that also we'll see what is NUnit and why, like how it is being done and all everything. All right, the basic annotations, what all are the annotations in NUnit, that also we'll discuss. Okay, the assertions and all, reporting also, so we'll also see how to generate the reports, the extent reports and the accessibility reports. Both the reports we'll just have a look at it. Okay, and then after that we will be making up the framework. So after the like introduction to the basic concepts, after like you will be clear with all your Selenium concepts, after that in the end we will be making up a framework in the class. All right, so either it can be a data driven framework or a page object model framework or a hybrid framework, it can be any framework. Okay, and then we will also see the grid also, like what is a grid, and the Jenkins also, right? Like how can you schedule your project and all everything, so that will be coming up in the Jenkins. Okay, right, so any doubts, anybody, regarding the course details, the topics that we have, like that you can just see over here? Anybody?
Not me.
All right, anybody else?
So every day the class will start at 9:30 to 10:30 EST, or it's going to happen at different.
We actually schedule the class 30 minutes before the actual time. Okay, so over here, like 8 a.m. IST will be the actual time for the class every
Okay.
day. But we will be scheduling the class 30 minutes before only, so that everybody can come and then can they can join the class and all everything.
Okay. So
All
just the link will be available and the class will start at
Yes,
8
yes, you're
IST.
right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any doubts from this checklist regarding the course?
So, and like all these topics in a day, you will be able to cover in one day, or just
No, it's
explore
not
them.
like no, it's not like that these all topics will be covered on the day 8th only. It's not like that. Like I have just prepared the topics that we will be actually taking up in separate days. So it's not like that these all topics will be covered in in one day only. It can extend to the other day as well. Okay, but the the class duration will be around 25 days. It will take around 25 days,
So
excluding the holidays.
in case if you need to extend the class to cover all these topics, we will be extending it. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Uh, in case if we have to extend it to cover all the topics, all the 24-day topics, then we will be extending the class
Yes,
also,
yes,
right?
yes. Yeah, yeah. We will be extending. Like I will be taking up all these topics.
Okay.
Okay, so that can take around like it. We will be covering up all these topics, and no matter how many days it will take. It's not like that we'll be taking up in 25 days or 24 days only. It can extend to 30 days, 35 days as well. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Will be available as after the class, or do we need to wait for an email, something like that?
No, I will be we'll just stop the class and then you can email me your doubts. I'll answer your doubts. I will be available after the class as well.
No, about the recording session. We are recording this session, right? This,
Yeah,
if we want to review it, yeah, we'll be able to access this recording.
yeah. I am discussing that only. You will get these videos as well, the recorded sessions of the class. Okay, you will surely get the videos. I am recording the class, and everybody will get the recorded class as well.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
yeah. Okay, so what all will be taught in what all will be taught in the class, as you can see over here, these are all the topics that we have just discussed. These all topics we will be taking up in the class. Okay, right. And then yes, I do record the current sessions, and you everybody will get the access to all these videos of the recorded sessions. We will give you a batch ID from which you can just have a look at all the videos. Like you can just go through all the videos once again, the recorded class, and then you can just have a look at it. Fine. And then, is C sharp required if I don't know programming? Well, I would say yes. You should, it's not compulsory that you should know C sharp, but if you know the basic concepts of the programming language, it can be either of the, it can be any language, Java, C sharp, Python, PHP, any language. But if you know the basics of the programming language, then it will be easier for you to learn Selenium and C sharp. Like the syntax would only differ in C sharp. Rest the concepts will still remain the same in all the languages, right? So if you know any of the programming languages, and yes, C sharp also, I would say yes, you should have the basic knowledge of the C sharp. And then I will be taking up the C sharp concepts as well. Will not directly move towards the Selenium part or any other. Will be starting with the C sharp only. I'll be telling you the basics, like how will you print something in C sharp, in the C sharp language, right? So we will be taking up the basics as well of the C sharp. Okay, and then if you know any of the programming languages, then it will be easier for you to learn Selenium as well. All right, so that goes with it. And then if you need any help in your project, yes, we have a team of members, like we over here, we'll who will help you out in your project, and then you can just ask your doubts anytime. Okay, we have a forum, you can post your queries over there, or I'll share with you my email ID as well. You can ask me your doubts anytime. You can just email me your doubts and I'll just revert you. Okay, fine. And what would be the duration of the class? As I told you, it would take around 25 to 30 hours. right? That is like we usually cover it in 25 days, around it takes around 25 days, and then yes, it can extend to more number of days as well. Like these are the course details, we have to cover these course details in the class, so it's not compulsory. It can, like I am saying, it will be covered in 25 days only. It can extend to any number of days. We will be covering up all these topics in the class. Okay. And like, do you cover the live projects? Like we actually work on the live websites only, or like for example the Facebook website or the zoho.com or rediff.com, right? So we actually cover the live projects only. Okay, so that you can do, you will just come to know when we will be discussing the framework. That time you'll come to know in a more better way. Fine. And then I'll just share with you this link, like to just have a look at this checklist. Okay, so I'm sending you in the chat. Please everybody note this link to, like, you can just go through the course details which we can just see over here. All right. So now let us start with the class then. Okay. Is anybody anything do you want to ask? So now we'll just start with the introduction part, like what is Selenium and all everything. Okay, so like as I told you, we can just have a look at it. This is the checklist, and then let's first of all talk about the brief history of Selenium. Okay, what is the history of Selenium, from where it evolved and where it is going route? And now let's just have a look at it. Fine. Okay, so if I talk about the history of Selenium, there are actually three components with us. Three components that comes with the Selenium. Okay, and then what all are these? That is, first of all, we have RC as one of the component. Then secondly, we have IDE, and then we have grid. Okay, so these are the three components that comes with the Selenium. All right. Now, okay, starting with the IDE. What is IDE? Now, IDE, it is still used. IDE is still used. Talking about IDE, it is a simple tool, and then it only works on the Firefox browser only. It only works on the Mozilla browser. It does not work on any other browser, Chrome, IE, Safari, Opera. It does not work on any one of them. It just works on the Firefox browser only. Alright, and then it is a record and run tool. It is a record and run tool. Now every automation tool has record and run features, which looks good, but it is not practical, because dynamic things you cannot just record and run, right? For example, if I take the example of any website, if I take the example of the Times of India website, okay, or any sports website or yahoo.com website, any website, you see that the websites are dynamic. Okay, so dynamic things, you cannot like dynamically record and run everything. All right, so that is what in the IDE, it is a record and run tool. Okay, and then moreover, no reports are there in IDE. Like you cannot generate reports in IDE. No doubt it is very easy tool to learn, but these are some of the concepts which are there in IDE. You cannot generate reports in IDE, neither the XSLT nor the extent reports with IDE. Okay.
No report means it is past or failed. Okay.
Sorry.
What do you mean by no report? If the case is past or failed, that kind of report, right?
Yes. Like I'll tell you what do you mean by a report? Like what do you mean by a report, and what all are the reports? Okay, I'll just tell you. Just for the timing, just consider that reports, you cannot generate the reports with IDE. That means like when we actually build the framework, we build various test cases in our project, right? So in order to have a look at oh, wait a second, I'll just show you a sample report. Mm, yes. So over here you see that this is the example, this is an extent report. Okay, now like I have one project with me which contains various test cases inside it, like create portfolio test, login test. All right, now you can just have a look at that. In this report you actually generate the logs as well, like what, like on each and every step what are you performing. Like first of all, like you will be entering your username and password to log in into your account, then you will be clicking somewhere like to provide the basic functionality, right? So everything we actually report everything in this extent reports. So this is a report in which you can just put all your information in one single report, and then when you see after some days your project, you can like easily go through your project very easily. Okay, you also generate the screenshot as well of the error messages in the reports. All right, so this is what I mean by report. So that is not available in IDE. We cannot generate the reports in IDE. All right. Yeah, is it clear now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So IDE, it will help you automate your test cases, but it's not a professional tool. All right. So if you have 1,000 test cases, then you cannot just use IDE. But if you have 10, 20, 10, 15 test cases, then only you can work with the IDE. Okay, so and then there is no need of any programming language to be known in order to work with the IDE. All right, so all right, so in order to remove all these defects and to work on multiple browsers, we switched to RC. Okay, so RC, it can work on multiple browsers, that is Firefox, Opera, Chrome, Safari. It can work on multiple browsers, RC. Alright, and moreover, in RC, you can generate the extent reports or the XSLT reports, everything you can generate the reports in RC. Okay, so you have to and then you have to have a knowledge of the programming language, like for example C sharp, Java, PHP, Python, in order to work with RC. Okay, so this was quite a challenge for the testers as well, and it's still a challenge. That is, you must have the knowledge of any programming language in order to work with RC. All right. Okay, so this is RC, and then like there were drawbacks in RC as well, like because of which we are not using RC these days. We are not using RC anymore these days. There was some drawbacks in RC. For example, there used to be a RC server which used to start from the command prompt. So many a time server never used to start or shut down properly. You have to log out, or you have to log off of your system and then log in again in order to work with your code. Okay, so many things which people couldn't do. A lot of drawbacks were there in RC, with like because of which we are not using RC anymore. Okay, so we'll not go into depth with RC. We are not using RC these days. All right. Okay, so then in order to overcome the drawbacks of the RC in 2011 around, okay, another component came into market, that is WebDriver. Okay, WebDriver 2. And now the newer version of the WebDriver has also like introduced, that is WebDriver 3. Okay, so WebDriver, it contains like it can do the same things as the RC. That is, it also works on the multiple browsers, right? And then reports are also generated with arts like sorry with WebDriver. Reports are also generated, and then you have to have the knowledge of the programming language as well in order to work with the WebDriver. And many more features, lot of features are there which are like have come up with the WebDriver that we will be actually taking up in the class. So we will be taking up the WebDriver only in the class. So the current scenario, the current component that is there in the market, the WebDriver. All right. Okay. Fine. And then IDA is still there. It is still the same. Okay. People still use it. If you have a project of 1 to 2 pages, then you can just use the IDE. Okay. Fine. And then grid has been converted to grid 2, or you can say grid 3 now. All right. With the work with the like latest version of the WebDriver. No, it only works on the web application only, Selenium WebDriver. I'll tell you that also. We'll come to that only. Okay. I'll tell you how, like, what is it. Okay. So IDE is still the same, and grid has been converted to grid 3. All right. Okay. So grid, like, now what is a grid? A grid, like, in the grid helps you run the test cases parallelly. You can parallelly run your test cases with the help of grid. Okay, that is what do you have in grid. Now in grid, what do we have? We have a central hub, we have a central machine with us, and then to this central machine we will be having like multiple nodes will be connected to this central machine, and then we will be sending all our test cases to the hub. All right, all the test cases will be sent parallelly to the hub, so that all comes under the concept of grid. Okay, and the same concept goes with grid 3 as well, which supports WebDriver also. So grid supports WebDriver also, and the parallel execution of the test cases. Okay, so once you have made your test cases in RC, you can make a central hub and then distribute your test cases among multiple machines. Okay, and then you can run it parallelly. So what happens now, why like what is the importance of the grid? The importance now, why we use it, it saves your time, right? You can execute your test cases parallelly at the same time if you have multiple test cases, and if you want to run them parallelly at the same time, and then you can just implement grid in your project, which will help you execute your test cases parallelly. All right. Okay. So this is what comes under the history. So our major focus in the class will be learning like is to cover the topics such as we'll be covering up the grid. Then we will be also taking up the Jenkins. How can you schedule your projects? The continuous integration. All right, what is Jenkins? That also we will discuss. Okay, and then yes, we will be taking up the C sharp as well. We will be starting up with the C sharp basics only, the basic syntax of the C sharp commands and all everything. We will be starting with C sharp only, and then we will be moving towards the WebDriver part, the Selenium part. Okay, so few concepts of C sharp which we will be implementing in Selenium, that we can just have a look at it. Okay, now all right, so and then in order to learn C sharp, I assume that you know the basics of the programming. All right, that is what is function, what is a function, what is for loop, the loops for while, do while loop. All right, and then the if else statements, how do you declare the variables and all. Now I assume that everybody knows the basics of the programming, right? I don't assume that you know the basics of the oops concepts, interfaces and all constructor. I just assume that you just know the concepts like the basics of the programming, the variables and the if else statements, the loops and all everything, the functions and all everything. Okay, because in order to learn C sharp, you should have the knowledge of all these concepts, the oops concepts. Right? So am I correct? Everybody knows it?
Yes, I
Mm,
know this.
uh,
Yes.
all right, that's good. Fine. Okay, let's see. Okay, now like have you installed Visual Studio on your system, or shall I show you the instruction? Or okay, I will just see how I'll just tell you from where you can just download your Visual Studio. Okay, so you simply go to the official website of Visual Studio, that is you simply go to visualstudio.com. Okay, right, so from here you can just download your Visual Studio, and then you just go to the downloads, click on downloads tab, and then install the community version of the Visual Studio. Alright, and then Visual Studio 2017 has also been introduced, has also come up in the market, but I haven't worked on Visual Studio, it has just arrived only. So I will be working on Visual Studio 2015 in the class as well. Alright, so you can just download the Visual Studio community version, that will be free. Okay, because otherwise in all the other versions, like the session will expire after some days and you'll have to reinstall it again. Okay, the Visual Studio, so you can just install the community version, it is free. You can just download it from this official website of the Visual Studio. Alright, so I open the Visual Studio. I have it already downloaded on my system. Alright, so this is your Visual Studio, the first page, the front page of the Visual Studio, that you can just have a look at. Okay, now if you want to create a new project, okay, you want to create your new project in Visual Studio, then you just go to the file menu and simply select new project. Or else, right, or else you can create a new project from here as well, new project. Okay, we have a shortcut link over here as well. And then I am assuming that you know the basics of the basics of the programming language, right? The functions and all, everything. Fine. Now, in order, like when you click on the new project, this window comes up which asks you like which type of a project you want to create. Now, with Visual C Sharp, we have various options that come up, like various kind of projects you can create in a Visual Studio application, right? That is, if you want to create a blank application, Windows Form application. So if you want to create a desktop application, then we select the Windows Form application. You can create your desktop application as well with Visual Studio. Okay, then we have the console application, ASP.NET web application, class library. So we have lot many options that you can just have a look at in like the various kind of a project, the multiple kinds of project that you can create with Visual Studio. But and then in the class we will be actually taking up two projects only, that is the console application and the class library project. Okay, we don't require any other project to be created, and then I don't think you also would be requiring up. All right, so the like only the two projects we will be taking up in the class, and I'll tell you what are these two projects, the console application and the class library project. Fine, and then we will be taking up these projects in the class only. Alright, so now say suppose I first of all create a console application, a project of a kind console application. Fine, I create the console application project, and then fine. Now say suppose I create day 1. Okay, so hold on. Fine. So this is your console application project, the console application which we have created right now. Now, starting with the concepts of oops, because people generally go wrong over here, right? We will be starting with the concepts of oops, because and then if you want to learn Selenium, you should know the concepts of the oops, as I told you. And then now, why am I focusing again and again on the oops concepts to learn, like you should have the knowledge of the oops concepts? It is because if you go to the official website of Selenium as well, that is seleniumhq.org. If you go to the official website of Selenium, fine, so it says Selenium automates browser. Okay, and then it is primarily used for automating the web based application for the testing purposes. It is not used for the desktop based application. All right, Priya? Yes, you were asking about that, can Selenium work on the desktop applications? No, it only works on the web application, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So Selenium, it automates browser only, right? Okay, and it is it is used for the web based application only. And then out here, if I click on the downloads tab, and then over here we have the documentation as well for the C sharp. You can have a look at, you can see C sharp, and then you just go to the API docs of C sharp. Okay, so over here if you see that this is your C sharp documentation, the documentation for the Selenium in C sharp. And if you consider, if you carefully consider this documentation, you will see that this complete documentation is, it is completely an oops architecture, right? What is, like, you see that classes, enumeration, right? And then we have interfaces and all, everything. So it is completely an oops architecture. If you don't know these concepts, what is an interface, what is a class, then you cannot understand this documentation as well. So this is because I am focusing on the oops concepts again and again, and that only we will be taking up in the class. Okay, so I know many of them, many of you, you will be knowing these concepts, interfaces, class, and I'll be taking up these topics in the class. So these, so 2 days we'll be taking up these topics, and then like you'll only clear your doubts only. Okay, you'll like have a more clear understanding of all these topics again. Okay, and then we will be implementing with the example also. Fine. Okay. Now this is our project, Visual Studio, a console application project, day one project, which we have created right now. Fine. Now, when you create when you create a first project, a console application, as you can see, these four folders come up by default. These four like classes, it comes up by default. Now, what are these? First of all, we have this properties folder, under which we have the assemblyinfo.cs, assembly info class with us. Now, as you can see, it's just the details, configuration details of your project only. We don't do anything with this class. It's just the configuration details about the Visual Studio and all, everything. Okay, we don't consider anything, we don't do anything in this class. Fine. And then after that, we have references folder. Now what is this references folder? I'll come to it in some time. Okay, and then we have one class app.config file. So it contains like which version of Visual Studio you are using. That is I think this is Visual Studio 2013, which I have opened. We'll be taking up Visual Studio 2015 as well. Okay, so today I just opened the Visual Studio 2013. So with Visual Studio 2013, we have 4.0 as the framework, the version of the framework. Okay, and then this is the .NET framework version. Alright, so this config file, it just contains the configuration details of your .NET framework. Fine, and then we have the class file, the program.cs class file, which contains the main method inside it. Okay, the main method from where actually our program starts. Fine, we all know that from the main function only our program actually executes. Okay, now say we have right. Okay, so this is like by default class program.cs class file which comes by default when you add a console application project. Okay, and then which contains a main method inside it. Now what is a class, what is a namespace, what is static, what is void, all these topics, all these concepts I will be taking up. I'll tell you what all are these. Okay, now say suppose, and now say suppose if I have to declare a variable. Now I know that everybody knows how to declare a variable, right? So if I have to declare an integer variable, then I simply say int, and you simply create any variable, right? Say I create a variable int x is equal to 11. Okay, and then similarly if you want to create a string type of variable, then you simply say string s is equal to, you write anything. Okay, right. And then I also assume that you know the for loops. Okay, and then also the if statements and all everything. Okay, and then also how to declare the functions, how to work with the functions, what is the function. I assume that you know all these topics. Okay, now and then if you want to print something in the Visual Studio in this C sharp with this C sharp code, then how do you do? That is, for that we write console dot write line, and then you write anything. Say I write Selenium C sharp class. Okay, so in order to print anything with the help of the C sharp code in Visual Studio, we have console.writeLine statements. Similar to the system.out.println in Java, we have console.writeLine statement in order to print anything. Okay, so this is like, say suppose I want to print this text. Okay, so I have simply written console dot write line, and inside it the text which you want to print. And then if I run this project, now how do you run a project in Visual Studio? That is, for that you see that in this taskbar, like in this menu, we have this start button. Okay, so you simply click on this start button. Okay, fine. So like the code has been executed, and then we didn't see the output. Now why we are not able to see the output? It is because, I'll tell you. If I write one more line, console dot read key. Okay, I write one more line, console dot read key, and now when I run my code again, so now you are able to see your output Selenium C sharp class. Now why? Now why earlier we were not able, like we haven't done anything, we haven't removed, there was not any error with us in the code, but simply this line console.read key. So console.read key is a line which help you freeze the screen, which actually help you to read the output. So if you want to read the output in any console application project, you have to write console.read key in order to read the output, in order to freeze the screen. So this line, it helps you freeze the screen till the time you press any key from the keyboard. You press anything, it will let you see the output till the time you don't close it by yourself. Okay, so if I don't write this console.read key, like earlier I haven't written this console.read key, and then now when I run my code again, you saw that the black screen, it did come up, but it just vanished away so quickly. It is because of this console.read key line. Okay, so this console.read key, it helps you read the output Selenium C sharp class. Fine. Okay, so this is what is the console.read key, and then console.write line is a line to print anything with the help of the C sharp code, and right, and then the shortcut for it is you simply write CW and then press double tab key. It will come console.write line, the shortcut for the console.write line. Okay, that is, type CW and then press double tab key, two times tab key, and then console.writeLine, the shortcut for console.writeLine. Fine. Okay, so this is one thing, do print anything in C sharp. Fine. All right. Now, okay, this was one thing, and then if you like, you can add as many number of class files in your a single project. That is, up till now we have only one class with us, program.cs class file. Okay, and then you can add any number of class files in your project. Say suppose if you want to add one more class, then you simply right click on day one, the name of your project, and then we have add an option add, and then you simply say add new item. Okay, and then over here you see that these are all the items that you can add in your project. If you want to add a class, if you want to add an interface, windows form, user control, component class, right, the configuration file if you want to add. Okay, fine. So these are all the like the objects, the classes and all, everything that you want to add. There are many components, many items that come with Visual C Sharp. Alright, so you, according to your requirement, you can add anything in your project. Fine, the settings file or the text file, the report and all, everything, you can just have a look at this dialog box, and then according to your requirement you can add. Now say suppose if I want to add one class, you simply click on add, and then this class will be added up. Alright, fine. Okay, now you can add any number of, now in a project there can be like there can be many class files. Right now I have only two class files with me, program.cs and class1.cs, but in a project you there can be many class files. Now when in the practical project, what happens is, like what developers do is that they put all these files, they put all these files, like all the class files, in a single file known as the DLL file. For example, now what is a DLL file? For example, if you consider this references folder, if you look at this references folder, you see that these are all the DLL files. Now C sharp is a collection of DLL file. Every DLL file, it is a collection of the class. Okay, right. Now there are many inbuilt classes in C sharp which we can use. For example, like if say suppose in this main function, say suppose I print datetime dot now. If I say datetime dot now and if I run my project, it prints the current date and time over here, 22nd Feb 2017, and the time over here, right? So this date time is an internal class. It is an internal class in C sharp. We are not writing the code to print the date, the current date and time. Rather, we are just using this date time class which is already there, which is inbuilt in C sharp. Right? We are just using that class. We are just calling that class. We are not writing the whole code to print the current date and time. We are just calling the inbuilt class which is there in C sharp. So everything, so we have many inbuilt classes in C sharp. Alright, and then this, from where is this datetime class coming? This is coming from this system, using system, that is from this system class. Now say suppose if I comment this line using system, you see that the errors start coming up. That is under the console word as well, and under this datetime class as well. So that shows that this console and this datetime, it comes under the system class, under the system, or you can say under the system namespace. So namespace is a collection of the class. It is a collection of class. All right, so these are all your namespaces that are added up by default in every class. So these namespaces will be added up by default in every class. If you add any more class, you see that in the next class also these classes are added up by default. Alright, and then under this references folder, we usually add the classes, the DLL files the DLL files that is actually required by us in order to work with our code, right? So in order to work with this datetime class or this console class, you require the system class. So you have added the references of this system class under this references folder. Fine. So this is what is the DLL class. Right. Now if you can extract this date very easily by just using this simple internal feature which is there in C Sharp, that is this date time, then similarly in Selenium also there's no rocket science that you have to learn everything. There's not like that. It's not like that you have to learn everything over here. This is the complete documentation for Selenium in C Sharp. Okay, so we'll not be learning everything, and it's not necessary also to learn each and every class file over here. Alright, so like what will be actually required by you as well in your project, that only the main important things only we will be covering up. Alright, that and then that will be required by you as well in your project, that only we will be taking up. And then it's not compulsory to learn every of each of these classes and all everything. Okay, so fine. So we will be learning the features, few of them in the class, like many of them, or you can say or few of them, and we'll just look into the class. All right. Okay, so this comes under the DLL. Fine, and then one more thing. All right. Now, before actually starting with the OOPS concepts, one more concept that we will discuss first, and then we will be moving towards the OOPS concepts. Fine. Now, as I told you, we will be actually taking up two kind of a project in the class only. That is the console application and the class library project. Right. Now, there are also library assemblies which have the DLL extension. Okay, leave that topic once. Now, say we have this console application. We have created this console application. Fine. Now, when you compile this program, this C# program, this console application, you will be like you are actually creating an assembly. Now, what is an assembly? Assembly is a file that contains the compiled code. Alright, now how do you compile your code? That is, you have this build, you simply click on this build menu and you just build your solution. So it says that the build has been succeeded. That means you have successfully compiled your code. Now there are two kind of assemblies. One is the executable, which have the exe file extension. So all the programs are compiled as executables only. Alright, that is, if I simply go to the folder, okay, that is, this is your day one project, and you go to the bin debug folder, then you see that you have your day1.exe file. So all the programs are actually compiled as executables only. That means those are the assemblies that you can execute, that you can actually execute. That is, if I say suppose close my this Visual Studio application, this project, and then now if you simply execute, if you simply double click on this day1.exe file, you see that your code has been executed. That means the file having the exe extension are actually the executables file. That means you can execute those files, the exe file extension. Fine. Okay, so that is it. And then there is another kind of a library assembly which have the DLL extension, file having the DLL extension, which is actually referred to as the class library, because they contain the classes that you can use in your program. Now, say for example, if I add now a class library project, fine. If I now add a class library project in the Visual Studio, okay. So this is your class library project, fine. And then you see that when you add a class library project, we have like in the console application we were having 4 folders, right? And then one thing we have in the class library, we have 3 folders only. And then another thing, in the class library project, there is like the class1.cs is the default class file which comes up automatically when you create a class library project. Fine. And then in this class you don't have any main function inside it. You cannot see main function inside it. That means you cannot execute your class library project, right? So this is the another difference between a class library and a console application. Now if I compile my class library project, fine, okay, if I compile my class library project, and when I go to this class library project, you see that for the class library you will be like a DLL file is executed for a class library project. All right. Okay. So this is the difference, the major difference between a console application and a class library project. So a console application, we just saw that it has the, when you compile a console application project, an exe file is generated for that, which is actually the executable file which you can execute. And for the class library project, DLL file is executed, DLL file is created, which you cannot execute. Those applications you cannot execute having the DLL file extension. Okay, and then the exe files, it contains the main method, whereas the DLL files, it does not contain the main method inside it. They do not contain the main method inside it. Fine. So these are the two differences between a class library and a console application, or you can say between the exe file extension and the DLL file extension. Fine. All right. Okay. Okay, so all right, so we have seen the documentation for Selenium and introduction to C Sharp as well, and how do you install the Visual Studio also we have just seen. Okay, and then all right, so we'll stop till here today.